Now, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon, where we talk rock, and we also talk to Alan Niven. Bonjour, Monsieur Alain. How are you?
I'm good. Little sprinkle of snow today. Winter's coming.
I know. We in Montreal here, and we're recording this just before December. I'm looking at grass, and I've got 15 degrees outside, and you in Arizona are staring at snow, which is that's exactly the way I like it, by the way.
Yeah, but a lot of my friends look at grass too, but not outside.
You know what? One thing I wanted to, or the other thing is, you don't change your time in Arizona. And yesterday, the Ontario government decided that they will no longer change the time and stick to daylight savings time, but they had a caveat. So it'll never happen. The caveat's very interesting. They said they will pass this law and enact it if Quebec and New York State go along with it. Yeah. So maybe soon we will be like you and we will never have to change our clocks again. But anyway, so speaking of changing our clocks, let's go back in time to INXS. Andrew Farriss, like I said, has a new album out called Love Makes the World, and it's a fun album. It's actually going to be very different for INXS fans, because if you're expecting a rock pop or a pop rock kind of record, it's got a bit of a country twang to it. In fact, not a bit. It's got a lot of country twang to it. Are you familiar with Oh, yes, you are familiar with INXS. Guns N' Roses opened for them or something like that, didn't they?
Opened. Yes, I like to qualify
yes.
that word in this particular event because we were all part of a one-day festival at the old Cowboys Stadium down in Texas. And we had people like Iggy playing, and Ziggy Marley. It was a really cool and good eclectic lineup. It was almost like an English festival, and I thought it was a good idea. And INXS were closing the show, and Guns were playing penultimately just before INXS. And at the time it was offered to us, it seemed to me like a good way to say thank you, good night, we're done on the Appetite touring. That this would be the last show of that album cycle, and a good way to go out. And Texas can be fun if you're not there too long. They have some pretty girls down there. So anyway, Axl was not in the best of moods for some reason, and as we were waiting to go on stage, he kind of wandered off, and I had to go after him and persuade him to come back and walk up the ramp and go on stage. And during the set, he was expressing his ennui by kicking wedge monitors, into the photographer pit. And this production manager for INXS came and presented himself before me, and got very approximate to my face, and informed me that if Axl kicked one more monitor, we were going to have to go at it, boy. At which point I took my jacket off and I said, let's go. And I had a couple of our crew in approximation as well. So I figured this was going to be an entertaining set with the band kicking monitors into the pit and trying to play to a huge audience, while their staff were punching it out behind the stage. But fortuitously, the guy backed down when I took my jacket off and wandered off and sulked. And the very next day, the punchline is the very next day, as I got on a plane to go back to LA, this gentleman came sat next to me and asked if I'd been at the show. And I said, yes, I manage Guns N' Roses. And at that point, he kind of turned his shoulder against me and didn't speak to me for the whole flight to LA. And that was Mr. Farriss.
Andrew Farriss. Oh. All right, that's interesting. I'm looking at the show here. You got to confirm a couple of things. So here it says it's September 17th, 1988, Texas Stadium. INXS plays 21 songs. It said the Smithereens played 16, Iggy Pop 23. But to be fair, they're all 1-minute songs for Iggy, so he probably played 24 minutes. And Ziggy Marley played a dozen songs. But it says that Guns N' Roses played 8 songs and had a Slash guitar solo. Did you actually only play 8 songs? Like, did you cut your set, or was that your full time? Or did the website I'm looking at not actually write down did you just sort of come in and come out? Like, hey, everybody, bye.
Well, Axel wasn't in the best of moods. And of course, if I'm given the opportunity to contribute a viewpoint on the circumstance, I'd have always said quality over quantity, my man. We will play quality over quantity, and you can have the rest.
And the other thing that I see in this set list, it says that you started your set with Drift Away. Did you start with Drift Away, the Dobie Gray song?
I don't know. I can't remember. It was another lifetime.
I know, but that's just weird. I've never heard of Guns N' Roses doing Drift Away. I mean, I know Bon Jovi. Were you copying Bon Jovi?
No, copying. Yeah. We could not wait to get out there and see a million faces and rock them all. Whatever that fucking means, Bon Jovi.
Yeah, but they were doing the Drift Away cover on their Slippery When Wet tour, and then this is 2 years late. Oh, I see what's going on there. All right. Oh, I see. Anyway, so yeah, you're crazy. It's so easy, Mr. Brown. So anyway, let us get over to, well, you know what? Love makes the world.
Let's get over to Mr. Farriss and find out how music is down under.
Yes, Love Makes the World. That is important, and that's the name of that's the name of the album. Here is from INXS, the one, the only, Andrew Farriss. We are speaking to Andrew Farriss. The new album is called Love Makes the World. It is, of course, an EP, and Andrew, of course, you might know him best from his time in INXS. And as we say here in Montreal, bonjour, Andrew, comment allez-vous? How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you. And thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Yes, and before we got started, I answered the phone and I wasn't really paying attention because I was actually listening to the EP, not for the first time, for like the 10th time. And there's a song on there called All the Stars Are Mine. And it's got this sort of bass thump to it that it's infectious. It's just terrific. So thank you for that. 2020 needed some feel-good music. And I'm telling you, these 5 songs fit the bill. So thank you for that. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Let us talk about this because, when, of course, somebody says, I'm an INXS fan, I'm going to check out the solo stuff or Gary Beer's stuff or whatever, they're expecting something. And this is a bit of a curveball for them, but it's a great curveball. Talk to me about the sound of the album and writing in this style and being aware that, hey, you know what, I'm not writing necessarily for the INXS fan, but I'm hoping that they'll hop on the train and join me on this journey. Right.
Well, first of all, I hope so too. And I'm glad you're enjoying listening to All the Stars Are Mine. I've been very, very pleased with how many people have really tuned into that song. And well, in fact, the EP, I'm kind of a bit overwhelmed. It's been doing really well. And I just wanted to say that, being really, the main songwriter, or one of the main songwriters in INXS for all those years, I didn't start out automatically wanting to have the kind of solo career I have right now. What happened was I've always been a songwriter, like I just said, for the band, and I've worked with a lot of other artists too, both as a music producer and as a songwriter. And I like working with other songwriters. I trust myself to write a song by myself. I'm okay with that. But also, I also enjoy working with other songwriters because I always learn something new, and I learn about their life, not just about my life. I learn about their philosophies on things, and I find that every time, I come out of it feeling that I've experienced something important when I work with somebody.
Yeah, you've done some great work, by the way, with the rock band Gun out of Scotland. Just a great hard rock band that folks in North America really need to discover. In terms of songwriting here, you of course were the main or the principal songwriter, one of them. You and Michael in INXS. When you're writing songs for yourself, is it a different process in the sense that you can't turn to Gary and say, "Hey, I need one of your classic bass lines. Hey, Tim, I need one of your." Is it a very different process working alone, or when you were with INXS, did you sort of work alone or with Michael and then just say, "Okay, here, band, let's go record these songs"? How did the process work, and has it changed at all?
Well, look, to be honest, the way I used to work a lot was that I would work out a lot of the beats and grooves and riffs and parts and all the parts on INXS, songs and recordings. I had worked a lot of them out before I even walked in the room to play my ideas to people or to Michael or anybody. And I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to do. But I also know that, there's such a talented group of musicians within INXS that they would, if they could come up with a part that was better than the parts that I'd written or whatever, that's cool too. I just, I always try to make as much headway as possible when I was writing. It's funny, because all the years I was touring with the band, I would never play a lot of the guitar riffs on stage that I actually wrote. But that didn't bother me because I just felt really lucky that these guys, such an awesome band as INXS, was playing my song in the first place. It didn't really bother me. But when it comes to what I'm doing now as Andrew Farriss with my EP and the work that I'm doing, I still do the same thing. If I want to write a piece, or like a piece of music, it could be a riff or what another instrument is playing, I'll just write it and I'll ask the musicians, "Can you please play this?" And most of the time they do. So I feel really lucky like that.
It's great. So how did you end up becoming the principal songwriter? Because there's a whole bunch of people in the band. They've all got ideas. They're all musicians. How did the weight of becoming the songwriter fall on your shoulders? Did you just have better songs, or did the other ones just not know what they were doing? Or, did you choose straws? How did they go, "Okay, Andrew, you are the guy"? And let me tell you, it worked out really well.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of complicated question. I think, first of all, you got to go way back when, really my songwriting sort of partnership, if you like, started with Michael Hutchence and myself when we were kids in high school. And before I was really working with either my brothers or the other guys in the band, I was already working with Michael. And the way we worked was that Michael wasn't actually playing an instrument. His instrument was, he sung a bit and he was very shy about that at first. And he used to write really good poetry. And I observed and acknowledged that. And I used to write lyrics too. And, but we talked about lyrics a lot. But for me, I played various instruments, including guitar and keyboards and things and harmonica. But for me, it was more that I really found with Michael that where we worked together so well for INXS as songwriters is because we had different skill sets, and that by working together, I'd create music beds or whole, arrangements and riffs and grooves or whatever I was doing. I'd program drum machines and stuff. But when I got together with Michael, it was something very personal and special with the two of us where, it wasn't a competition. That's one of the big things that we talked about. Not long before he passed away, we used to joke about it and say, we're not competitive with each other, because it actually benefited INXS hugely that Michael and I weren't competitive as songwriters. I think for other bands, they can get into a lot of trouble when they start getting jealous and weird about this person does that and I don't get enough of this or whatever. But Michael and I never felt like that. All we felt was it was a good combination because we needed each other and our skill sets suited each other.
Yeah, they really did. So let me get over to Love Makes the World here again. My co-host on the show is Alan Niven, who used to manage Guns N' Roses, and he wrote pretty much all the songs for Great White. And I've had this discussion with him as to what makes a great hard rock song and so on and so forth. What for you makes a good song? What's sort of the secret sauce that makes a good song? And, as you're getting into Love Makes the World, the EP, and then next year, the full-length album, has the ingredients changed in what makes a good song, or is a good song a good song? And sort of how do you know what's the songwriter's part of you that goes, yeah, this one's good, and nope, that one goes to the pile?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, over the years, for me as a songwriter, I've written so many songs. I mean, I must have written over 300 songs with Michael for INXS. The other guys in the band contributed songs too, but I guess I was pretty prolific back then, and I still am. I've continued to write songs, but I don't always know exactly if I'm writing a song, whether the song is outstanding or just ordinary or not good at all. I'm not sure sometimes. And so what I often do, and the way I've worked my whole career, the way I work as a songwriter, is I'll write a song, either by myself or with somebody else, and I don't rush the song out to people. I usually put it in the corner of the room. That doesn't mean it's in the naughty corner. It just means I'm not sure what the little animal is yet. And then I listen to it as time goes on. Sometimes I like it within, a week. Sometimes I'm not sure in a year. And sometimes 10 years go by and I'll pull that song out again and I'll listen to it and I'll say, yeah, this song still sounds okay to me. It's good. And then I usually is my indicator that if this thing can stand the test of time, then I'll put it out. That's the way I've always worked. And I used to do it with INXS too, where I would write, riffs and songs and whatever, and I would put them aside. And I've had record producers freak out when I told them, like, you say a song called New Sensation, and I say, yeah, I actually wrote the music for that 5 years ago. And they're like, what? Why didn't you tell me? I said, well, because I was just getting used to it, And that's the way I've always worked.
That's fascinating, because you hear a lot of guys that will say, oh, I wrote whatever, I want to hold your hand in 5 minutes while I was waiting for the bus. And you go, really, what? So you let them sort of, what's the word for it? You let them sort of ferment on the shelf like a fine wine? That's interesting. So you've always done that? There's no song that you just go, ooh, this one's ready, let's go. You don't have that 5 minute, I wrote a great song story?
I think some of the songs
that's fascinating
of INXS's career,
right?
Not all of the songs were like that. Some of them, for example, "Need You Tonight," I wrote that song with a cab waiting outside. I called a cab to take me to the airport to go work with Michael, where he was living in Hong Kong, and I was in Sydney. And I wrote the music and I put it on a cassette back in those days, which is funny because they've become kind of hip again with younger people, cassettes. Anyway, I put it on a cassette and I took the music over with a cab driver waiting for me, which was weird anyway. So I got to Hong Kong and then I played it to Michael, and within about 10 minutes he'd written that lyric and that song was kind of born. That was a little different. But there's other songs that definitely took a lot longer than that for me to be comfortable with. And I don't think that everything that I do all the time is necessarily great or even good. I don't know. I'm just like everybody else. I think the difference with what we just talked about was in those years when I was writing with Michael, especially with songs like What You Need, which was top 5 in the US. And then that was from the Smike Thieves album. Then from the Kick album, we wrote songs that had top 5 songs all around the world. And during that period, the pressure was enormous on us to come up with these things to give to the band and to the record company and to the radio stations. And so we would write quite fast. But I remember that one of the things I really respected and admired about working with Michael is he was just like me. We were very, what's the word? We used to test our songs. We used to make sure that what we had written was as good as we could possibly write. It wasn't like, people will just love everything you do. In fact, one of the things that you'll see with many artists and acts around the world is that they get on a train and they think it's all really exciting, and they put all this music out, and then one day they put out a song and nobody likes it. And it's like being in a stadium with the old Roman emperor, and the thumbs are up or the thumbs are down, and you can be groovy one minute and they can hate you the next, you know. And that's just the reality with that kind of business, you know. And there's so much competition too. Like there's always up and coming people, and that's great. And there'll be people that, you know, that have been on before who are better than you. But one of the more funny things I've found about releasing songs on radio is that if you have enough hits yourself, you end up competing with yourself.
Yeah, you do. You take that golden 3-minute slot away from another song. Let me just ask you about albums and putting it out in 2020. I was first approached to interview you, I think it was back in January or February. You know, he's got this album coming out. I think it was slated for April, it might have been, or maybe May. And then the pandemic hit and stuff shut down. They went, okay, forget it, we're holding off. And now the full length is holding off to 2021. Talk to me about that decision, because there is obviously, you know, the machine has to move. You know, you got to get the album out, you got to do the promotion, you got to go do the shows or the showcases, or, you know, go sing at the Super Bowl or whatever. And of course, you can't do any of that now. But the other side is a lot of people are locked down. They got nothing to do and sitting around discovering new music, new TV shows, new Netflix movies. So what went into your decision? Did you sort of say, no, I want to do it the traditional way with a cycle, album, interviews, out we go? And can you see the whole part of, well, fans had nothing to do. Maybe I should have filled the void. Well, how did you make the decision to hold off?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question. That's right. I was actually releasing my self-titled LP, you know, Andrew Farriss, and I'd already released 2 tracks from the LP, Come Midnight and Good Mama Bad. And they were getting good reception. And of course, that's right, what you said, that then the virus kicked in all around the world, including Australia. And I had interesting conversation with and communication with Broken Bow Records out of Nashville, and also BMG, which is my label for the rest of the world. And they recommended I hold off on continuing to release my album because the world went nuts. And it's still trying to pull itself out of this terrible virus thing. But during that time, around about March or whatever it was, when I paused my album, which, by the way, will come out on March 19th in 2021. And I'd want to thank people who've pre-ordered my album. I really appreciate that. I didn't want to mess everyone around. It was a virus thing. But anyway, so what happened was that I started thinking more about songs that I'd written, and just like we talked about before, that I had just shelved or put in the corner of my mind for a while. And I started thinking about the lyrics on that Love Makes the World, my EP. And all these songs I had, and I started thinking, I'd recorded quite a few of them, and I was happy with the recordings. And so I suggested to the record label, look, why don't I put these out? Maybe people will enjoy them. I don't know. It seems like these lyrics make sense with what we're all going through. And I thought the label would say, no, we don't want to do that, you know. But they didn't. They said, that's a great idea. And then that's why now we're talking about my EP with the 5 tracks.
Now, is the EP songs from the album that you pulled out, or will you add them as bonus tracks if they're not already there, or are these really 2 separate entities, and are they just 2 separate things?
Yeah, they're 2 completely separate entities. That's right. Love Makes the World, my EP, is completely different than my album, Andrew Farriss. That's right. And the songs are completely different. That's right.
Is the musical style different as well?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Some of it is and some of it isn't similar to my album. I just felt, to me, it was the lyrics on this EP that made the most sense to me to put out at this time, because I think what the world is going through and still experiencing is extraordinary and very difficult for a lot of people. And I felt that the subject matter lyrically was something, as a songwriter and as a communicator with people, that I might touch somebody's heart or help them in some way, then that'd be great.
Oh, no, it is. Now, I don't know how much time they gave us. I can't remember, but do you have time for a couple more questions?
Sure.
Was it 15 minutes or 20 minutes they gave us? I can't remember. Anyway.
Doesn't matter. We're talking.
So,
yeah, I can tell. I can tell you a little bit about each of the songs on the EP if you'd like.
Yeah, do that, and then I do want to ask you another question. But yeah, I'd love to hear that because again, I when I research stuff and I listen to stuff and I've been a fan, I don't just do 15 seconds and out. I listen to this whole 5 song EP a bunch of times, and I just really like the way it flows. And I know some will say, well, it's more country than it's not. Who cares? A great song is a great song. And My Brother is fantastic. Love Makes the World is fantastic. All the Stars Are Mine are fantastic. And the other 2 songs are fantastic. Kudos. Well done. So yeah, go ahead. Let's hear the story on
Thank you.
each.
Sure. I mean, I'll keep it brief because you said a bunch of nice things, but I appreciate it. I just want to say, look, Tears in the Rain is really about nature, the environment. We only have one Earth, and I know you read about in the papers or you see online all this stuff about scientists and spaceships and whatever else and the new planets or whatever. All I know is we only have one planet and we live on it together, and we better look after it. That's really what that song's about. And there's 2 brothers many years ago, that about 10, 12 years ago, they set out to rescue the orangutans as an endangered species in Borneo, in the jungle. And 10 years later, they've raised over $900,000 and secured 140,000 acres of rainforest for this endangered species. That's pretty good for a couple of kids that set out to do that. My Brother is really about loss of a male figure in your life. I co-wrote the song with a good friend of mine, John Stevens, and the song is about losing someone, a male figure in your life, and how it's difficult to express those emotions, and that's what that song's about. Love Makes the World is really about the cycle of life. It's about how we don't get through life without help from other people. Right from the moment we're born, right to the end of your life, it's the way it works. All the Stars Are Mine is really about, for me, it was about having. At one point in my life, I didn't live in Australia. I lived in the UK or in London for nearly 5 years, and 2 of my 3 children were born when I lived there. When I came back to Australia, I reflected on that, along with my co-writer, Susie DiMarchi, who'd had a similar experience with her family in the United States, came back to Australia. And then you reflect on that and you think about it and you think, well, by having children born in a foreign country, it makes the world a little bit closer because the people closest to you in your life are experiencing a foreign culture and the politics of that country and the food and, the good and bad. But it makes you think a lot about where you live, not just where they live. And the last track, being First Man on Earth, is basically about how it's way too long. I apologize for that. It's 8 minutes and 8 seconds long. But the song is really about us, again, as human beings. We're just human beings, a biological species living on Earth, and yet we're obsessed with technology. I'm talking to you with technology right now. There was different technology in 50 years' time. There'll be different technology in another 50 years' time. But we keep on going as a biological species, and the questions that are asked in that song is, where is this going?
And it always that's one thing that always intrigues me, because I have my iPhone sitting here next to me and I'm going, we have reached the end of the world, and of course in 30 years they're going to look back at this and go, wow, you used one of those? Really? How? Right? I mean listen.
Right.
I mean, listen. We all grew up in a household with a rotary dial phone, and now we look at that and you go, "Really? You used a rotary dial? Why?"
Yeah.
I'll ask.
Now, wait a minute.
Go ahead.
Yeah, wait a minute. I agree. And here's the thing, see, is that apart from, to me, some advances in medicine and other things which have been really wonderful, a lot of it is driven by people making money. I don't know, it necessarily makes our lives any better. Some of it does with technology, but some of it doesn't. And, some people misuse it too. But the interesting thing about it, all of it, is that, what never changes for us as human beings is we all need to get good quality food and drink clean water, have a roof over our head, and the air needs to be clean. That's all I know.
And that's why I live in Canada. I'm kidding. We have all of that. But all right, I'll ask you 2 final questions, and then we'll move along here. because this has been, I mean, I could go another hour, but it is the 30th anniversary of the X album, or the 10 album. But I want to know about the pressure going into that, because Kick comes out and lights the world on fire. It is currently certified at over 20 million sold worldwide, and of course, certifications are not always kept up to date. It's probably at 25 or 30 million actual sold by now. What was the pressure like from you artistically, from the band, from the management, from the record companies, and all the radio guys going, all right, mother, you just did Kicks. Let's see what you got. Was X an easy process and you just had the songs and you had the motivation? Or were you under the gun to come up with something, and did you feel that pressure? And then, of course, X comes out and you've got, you've got Suicide Blonde and By My Side. And of course, victory goes to the songwriters. But how difficult was that process going into that, knowing that you had to better a 20 million selling record?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously, there was pressure there, but I think a lot of the pressure was actually caused going into the X album, because we toured so hard to promote the Kick album, because it was in everyone's interest, including INXS's, for us to promote that record and to keep touring. And I think that pressure of the touring, to me, was worse than the pressure of following the album up. And I think it was tough on us physically. And I really felt for my younger brother, John. He really was really struggling as a drummer, because we were on tour for like 14 months or 18 months. I don't even know anymore how long it was. Look, the point is that going into the X album, it was more an artistic art factor. And for me, I recognize too, because with the band's blessing, which was in itself a miracle, they'd agreed that Michael and I would write all the songs on the Kick album, which is what we did. And I felt we did a good job. And so when the next album rolled around, the other guys, understandably, in one sense, were like, well, hey, we want to start writing songs again. And so I'm like, well, sure, okay. And when they started to say that, I started to work more old school, just on a piano with an acoustic guitar and a pen and paper, and start to write songs. And I wasn't making elaborate demos like I had before that, to give to everybody with parts and riffs and grooves and stuff. And because I thought that's what they wanted, was to be able to contribute. So I remember there's a funny moment where I walked into the recording studio to start recording the X album, and the record producer, Chris Thomas, who'd produced Kick and Listen Like Thieves, said, I started playing my songs. And he said, what's with the acoustic guitar and the piano and the lyrics scribbled? And I said, well, that's my song, And he's like, where's the demos that you normally make? We want to hear the demos, And I'm like, well, I thought everyone wanted to write and contribute, to this next record. And there's a kind of silence in the room. And he goes, no, you need to go home and make your demos sound like they did before. I'm like, well, sure, I can do that. And with Kirk's help from the band, he helped me upgrade some of the technology of the recording equipment that I had. And I went back home and I put together some demos. And then Michael and I actually worked together in New Zealand, in Auckland, I think, in a recording studio, making more fancy-sounding demos. And then we brought them back. But I think the X album was a really great album. I think it was an exciting album. I think it was difficult, you're right, to follow up the Kick album, but we did. We followed it up.
Yeah, you did. And first of all, thank you for your time. And I'll finish on this. I grew up through the 80s as, a hard rock fan. I was all about Kiss and Motley Crue and Def Leppard and Bon Jovi when they were still sort of hard rock bands. And yet, whenever INXS showed up on Much Music up here in Canada, I listened. I paid attention. I didn't change the channel. I didn't get out of the seat and walk to the TV and turn the dial because, back then we didn't have remotes. What was it about? What was it about the band that was able to cross genres? Because not everybody could do it. Duran Duran had some success, and of course, Bon Jovi had success with going the other way. But what is it about the band? Was it just the songs? Was it the look? Was it the energy of the? Why was INXS able to cross the boundaries and not be, oh, you're a new romantic, oh, you're a pop band? And because you weren't. You were just INXS.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that is something I've always admired about INXS too, and I was in the band. Look, I think what it is was we were born out of the pubs in the Australian rock scene, and when we started traveling and working in 52 countries around the world, you begin after a while, you start to say, look, I'm a citizen of the world and people are enjoying the music we're making. Is it really that important what genre we're in? Not really. The important thing is that people like what we're doing. And so I think for the record companies, we were a kind of nightmare because we didn't just make hard rock or EDM, or we didn't just do funk, and we didn't just do pop, and we didn't, we would do just about anything we felt like doing. And we always did that, and I'm proud of the fact that we did that. It causes some trouble sometimes with the record labels, but I think in the long term, I mean, I won't say which names, but some very well-known people who you would know, often, three of them on separate occasions said to me, one of the strange or amazing things with INXS's music is it's still on some contemporary radio stations all around the world. And there's not many artists that happens to anymore. And I say, well, it's because we used to mix up genres. It didn't matter. What matters is the recording.
And I'll say this as a total compliment. If you ask me what genre is INXS, I don't know. To me, you're just INXS.
Exactly.
I have
yeah, that's right.
And there's a lot of bands you can go, no, that's a punk band. The Sex Pistols are punk. But INXS, right. INXS is INXS. I don't know. I mean, you're not a pop band.
I love those guys, and I miss them. Mitch, it's been lovely talking
Absolutely.
to you.
Thank you, sir. Cheers. Bye-bye now.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.